Hi and welcome to this year's first ever Blended Capacity Europe, taking place online and live in London. Thank you for joining us. It's great to be able to connect with you all, wherever you are in the world. You can download the SWATcard app to connect with everyone attending this year's Capacity Europe. Thank you for joining this following panel session sponsored by Odine Solutions. Many thanks to Odine Solutions for the support of this year's event, and do say hello to the team during the course of the event. So the session we have is entitled The Importance and Value of Real-Time Number Validation in Voice. And joining the panelists we have here today is Nick Cowley, Global Sales Director, Odine Solutions, who will be moderating this debate. Nick, all yours.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to my guests in advance for their efforts today. The focus today is the importance of number validation in voice. Validation in SMS and A2P has been a must and an expectation for a period of time in order to obtain the traffic and the business that you need. But it's becoming more proactive now in voice as well. Voice was always quite a reactive business in terms of disputes and fraud, finding it at a later date, opposed to finding it in the earlier stages in a more proactive manner. So what we're looking at today is the importance of validating numbers before you route them, the importance of having a choice around what you route and where you route it to. And I'm pleased to say that we've been joined by a very experienced and talented group of participants today on the panel. So I guess starting from the top, Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll work our way through.
Thanks, Nick. It's a pleasure to be here. That's my first fail with the mute button. It won't happen again. I'm Andrew Tierney. I'm Executive General Manager of the global team for the M&F Group based out of Australia. So we work under the TNZI brand and the Symbio brand. Most people will have heard of the TNZI brand. The Symbio one's more domestically focused. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Andrew. Nicholas?
Thank you. Thanks, Nick. So my name is Nicholas Su. I'm the Executive Vice President of Telin, specifically for the voice and mobility portfolio over here. And Telin is the international subsidiary of PT Telkom, the incumbent operator in Indonesia. It's a pleasure to be here, Nick. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicholas. Amit, off to you.
Hey, thanks, Nick, and hello, friends. So I'm Amit Gaur, and I am working with Reliance Communications based in India. I head the product management for both wholesale and enterprise voice business teams, and I've spent 2 decades in the industry across as a wholesale carrier and retail or enterprise operations. And of course, currently wearing both the hats. So nice meeting all of you.
Excellent. Thank you, Amit. And then Eli, to you.
Hi, my name is Eli Katz. I'm the CEO and founder of XConnect, a company that many of you might not have heard of yet. We are a leading provider of number information services to the communications industry. That's spanning both messaging as well as voice and identity. And we provide billions of queries as one method of delivering services, as well as actually data to both messaging players, global carriers, and MNOs.
Great, thank you, Eli, much appreciated. So as I said, today's aim is really to look at how as operators we can be more proactive in terms of fraud detection, fraud management, risk management also, but also how maybe with the ability to validate services in advance and proactively work with them, it may open up new markets and opportunities for operators. So the reason I came to you last, Eli, was I'm now going to come to you first in terms of really kind of, I know we've spoken about this, but there seems to be quite a shift from voice operators to have this intelligent numbering service in terms of the way that they daily operate their businesses now. So, I mean, maybe if you can just provide a brief kind of synopsis of what you're seeing in the market right now, and that kind of appetite from the voice operators.
Okay, thanks, Nick. I think it's interesting just to highlight from our perspective, our main business started actually on the with business messaging players, the sector known as the A2P business. And I know that's not strictly the prime remit of the panel, but I think it's worthwhile just highlighting that for a second. The rationale in business messaging for requiring accurate number information services is essential. If you don't have the examples of number portability information to route the message to the correct mobile operator, then in the messaging world, your chance of losing the message is very high, or you won't get a read receipt, or the quality will be impacted in terms of delivery, response time, delivery reply rate. So that was the rationale behind looking at the messaging industry for the benefit of bringing number portability information on a global basis. What was then interesting is that as we then expanded that onto the global carrier side, there's a number of different business drivers why we're seeing the rationale behind this number information services. So on one hand, you have the number portability query capability, and that's essentially enabling direct routing. And the benefits of direct routing are really there to deliver the quality that carriers more and more are looking at being able to deliver to their customers. And obviously, the most direct route you can have, the improved quality is going to be a direct outcome from that. And whether that's measured in terms of high definition, VoLTE, and simply almost like your MOS score, right? An unusual term to measure, to recognize, but all these kind of quality drivers are enabled once you are delivering a call in the most direct way possible. But then you kind of expand that number information side away from purely global number portability and look at that from a kind of global number range information. So that prefix table, which sounds very mundane, it sounds very trivial, certainly compared to the billions of numbers that need to be managed on number portability side. Here you're talking about, from our perspective, 7-8 million ranges of information around the world. It's more of an art than a science to be able to manage that information source, but the use cases why that is being utilized now by the voice industries right across everything, validating A number, validating B number, and those are drivers for both commercial reasons as well as quality reasons. And I'm sure we'll kind of hear examples from the panel why we're seeing that. So there's quality reasons, there's fraud reasons. In simple terms, if a call is ever being made to a number that's unallocated, somebody needs to ask a question somewhere. Block it, trap it, alert it, etc. Something's going wrong somewhere, right? Something's not the way it should be. So these kind of data sources are all being increasingly utilized by the industry to improve quality, minimize fraud, and improve the underlying economic commercials of the business.
Perfect. Thanks, Eli. And I think that's a really valid point that maybe leading on now to Nicholas is around that risk management, that fraud reduction. I mean, fraud is a very broad term. Whenever we hear it in the industry, fraud prevention. Do you have a fraud module as such? I mean, there isn't just one element to this. There's a whole raft of items. So in terms of your sort of perception, and of course, Andrew and Amit, feel free to jump in as well, is that, the measures to validate, to understand, to be aware and have a choice is a significant step forward, do you believe, for you and your markets?
Well, yes, Nick. I think it's a very broad question, as you mentioned. Fraud is a big word. I guess, particularly in the last number of years, it's just picked up steam now that every operator in the world or every carrier in the world, one way or the other, looking at it, how to prevent it, how to stop it, and how to monetize it, some degree of stopping it and monetizing it. So it's an ongoing debate going around every single operator. Now, coming from an operator perspective, it obviously, fraud is a big concern there. When they calls that comes in, that is obviously with a bad intent coming in to a subscriber. Obviously we know the number of frauds out there, one recalls and whatnot, and these are all something to be prevented, something to be, we should stop them. And how do we do that in real time? I guess that's some of the biggest challenge out there in the market out there. I'm just jumping back and forth a little bit here. In the most recent days, we have this whole flash call and voice OTP, and that is obviously taking up a lot of interest in the specific operators who are obviously monetizing the A2P side of the business. And this is something that is getting increasingly a concern for an operator who are, obviously, let's call them as a pricing their E2P in an interesting price market out there. They obviously were making pretty decent revenue out there. And when such calls arise, we're talking about millions of such calls going out there, and this is a clear revenue leakages out there. Now, obviously, what do we do about it? What can be done about it? Now, obviously, number validation comes a pretty important point here. So we know if calls comes in from an unallocated number range or a range that is not in an actual range of an operator, we could stop that clearly. And this is something that I guess every operator should look at it at one point or the other. Now, I guess the bigger problem is how do you stop that and differentiate real call that comes through? As an operator, we do not want to unnecessarily block or filter out a call that are legitimately coming through to a subscriber. And obviously that is that's a factor of service quality for as an operator offering a service. So I guess these are the couple of things that really, as an industry, we all should be discussing openly and discussing in how do we resolve those concerns out there. Thanks, Nick.
Sorry, my turn. Andrew, please carry on.
Oh, sorry. I was going to add actually, and I was talking to some of our routing team just today about this very fact, and we're tired of pouring resource into maintaining a list of block A and B numbers. Pretty much, it's just an ongoing process now. Part of our work with the i3 forum is about sharing information around around numbers that are fraud related. We have plenty of number ranges that we detect that are not just fraud, but also outside of normal number ranges. And if it would just cut down the amount of resource and time and effort we'd put into managing this, if we had the ability to know what was real, what wasn't, right at the very beginning of the call.
Yeah, it's certainly an ongoing battle in the sense of, the fraudsters, those in the market we don't want are not going to stop. They're just going to keep evolving and finding ways. And again, as Ellie says, it's an art in terms of keeping up and trying to keep ahead. From that perspective, Amit, I mean, from your perspective, are you seeing a similar trend, or is it slightly different trends for you?
No, absolutely, and I agree with Nicholas and Andrew. And and if you see the volume of all the fraud and or rather phishing calls is on such a rise. I mean, for us, a lot of our enterprise customers from the financial sector, they also come to us asking what can we do at a network level. I mean, apart from just plainly educating the customers. So even consumers are looking at things that could be done at an operator layer rather than just plainly inevitable kind of fraudulent calls.
Yeah, and I think that's a very valid point in terms of we're all fighting the same battle, but there's just slightly different versions, slightly different nuances of those battles, which are how do we, as I said, keep ahead, but also to take this sort of a step further now. With the validation side of the service, is that what we believe as a vendor and working with Eli and his team is also sort of a change in mindset around maybe some of the commercial aspects of wholesale or maybe some of the structures in terms of sales. Is that when you're taking new interconnects on, taking new partners on, a lot of effort goes into that particular process, the due diligence, the testing, the whole commercial aspect. And if very early on you can find out there are issues with that traffic, it can affect a number of commercial aspects, whether it's swap deals, whether it's volume deals. And Andrew, I think you also mentioned to me recently about specific destinations that maybe you're not nervous of, but are they the right sort of traffic? Can you monetize that safely with a minimal amount of risk? And I think the sort of evolution of this validation may open up potentially some new markets for you guys. Would that be fair?
A number of our partners just block down destinations because they can't, they don't have the capability to filter out the valid and invalid numbers, and also the the fraud ranges that are buried sometimes within normal number ranges. And so keeping track of what is a real number range, what within that number range has actually been detected as fraud in the past or a fraud range is very, very important. And giving access to some of the smaller countries around the world is absolutely critical. It's not so bad now we're not traveling, but I can tell you that some of our partners in the Pacific Islands, they do travel, they like to roam, and they really like to be able to call home. And often they get around the world and they just can't because carriers these days have blocked down the entire country. And that's something we're trying to fix as well. So making things easier is absolutely critical to the entire population.
No, that's good. And I think it's that seamless ability to travel and roam without worry, but also, I guess for operators, you have to control your risk as well in terms of they're probably high revenue destinations. They're maybe not massive volumes, but they don't need to be big volumes if they're high revenue. So I think that's something that we're seeing as a fairly commonplace, and that does affect more than just kind of the commercial side of it. It maybe limits your ability to service customers fully in some ways due to that perceived risk. From there, Ellie, just to come around to you on maybe some of these more exotic destinations in terms of the number range management of those. I mean, how accessibility to that data is that becoming an easier process, or is that just an ongoing challenge?
If it is, I'm not aware of it becoming any easier.
Okay.
No, as I mentioned, it really is an art, right? In the sense of, you're having to work with, different regulators around the world and different groups of operators, right? In terms of the up-to-dateness, in inverted commas, of the national numbering plan. And in some cases that's kind of, a fact sheet sent by somebody somewhere at some point in life with a little scribble on the side saying, oh, please look at the earlier point, right? Others have a slightly more structured basis in terms of almost like an Excel sheet, which is already getting quite exciting. But when you're trying to do this across 220 countries, each one with a completely different, format, style, engagement, communication path, etc. And I can't see, I think we're too far gone as an industry for some new ITU edict to say, hello, this will be the standard de facto format for all of this. I don't think that's happening. Would be great, but kind of, probably not in my lifetime. So I mean, just an example, we're seeing around about 100,000 changes a month at the moment to number range information. That's 100,000. We publish every month all the deltas, all the changes, as in we kind of aggregate it per country. And it kind of amazes us to see. So some countries can go literally like months without any changes at all, and then suddenly you'll have a whole big raft, etc. So that ability to keep up to date with that kind of dynamic information is essential to ensure, as Andrew was pointing out, you want to be able to not do the, in inverted commas, the dumb thing of block the entire country. Not helpful to you as a business, not helpful to your consumers, not helpful to the traffic flows. So having the most granular information possible allows you to detect clearly this is an allocated range. There's a very interesting category in the middle between allocated and unallocated. There's the kind of what we call it the unknown, and it's really interesting how experience of how carriers deal with the unknown section. The most logical approach, actually, that I've seen, it's quite sophisticated. It's based upon, well, depending upon the country where it's going to. I'll make a judgment whether the unknown category, the ranges which fit into the unknown, whether I will or won't route them. If it's unallocated, that's black and white. If it's unknown, then I'll kind of take a country by country approach based upon my risk profile, my traffic profile, my commercial profile, whether to alert or block, etc. So there's quite a lot of sophistication behind the scenes. But I must admit, from all of this, that the key thing that's enabled the industry to kind of move forward is having platforms like the Odine platform, because you have to have quite a sophisticated capability in your network to be able to apply that level of sophistication, both in terms of being able to access the data, to be able to then utilize the data in an efficient manner. Right? And that's not easy. Kind of in the good old days, and kind of the version 1 of the SIP platforms and the call routing engines and the center routing engines, this kind of concept of A number and B number validation was kind of a bit new, to say the least. Therefore, the capabilities was not native, and it really needs some of the more modern generation of platforms to be able to deliver what ultimately is best for commercial and quality purposes.
Thanks, Eli.
Just to add to that, Eli, let's not forget that, they are legit operators and legit, in Europe that we're seeing a lot, that the premium number ranges are being carved out legitimately, obviously, for the purpose of marketing or whatnot. And obviously, these numbers are legitimately being carved out. And obviously, the intent of using those numbers may not be too, obviously, legit out there in a way. So how do you differentiate them? I guess it's something that it does bother a lot of operators out there. When you see this number range coming in, it is obviously legit. It's not a, it's not a look at number.
Yeah, so absolutely correct, Nicholas. And it means that what I call that is down to the granularity of the information. So it's not that, we as XConnect, we're not making decisions saying, oh, premium numbers are evil. We're simply marking premium numbers as premium numbers. And once you have that information, then it's your decision as an operator to say, well, look, premium numbers to countries A, B, C, I'm quite comfortable. The risk profile, the commercial benefits, etc., work. But on the other hand, premium numbers in the following countries, no way, Jose, right? And we all kind of roughly have a sense of where that's happening. So again, that's down to utilization of the granular aspect of the information with that information, such as its premium. I'll give you another example of a kind of a high risk fraud thing. So if a number is classed as a mobile network number, so it's an MNO number, right? It's classed as a mobile range. But interesting, that particular carrier does not have an MNC MCC code, right? Now there's completely legitimate cases why that should be the case. I'm not a mobile operator, but I as a wholesale operating company, I'd be given access to these mobile ranges, which I'm enabling for MNOs, MVNOs, MVNEs, wherever it is, etc. But it does mean there's a slightly higher risk profile for that group of numbers, because it could be used for illegitimate IRSF, etc., reasons. So being aware of that combination, again, from the number of information services saying it's mobile, but it does not have an MNC against it, just be aware you might want to have a slightly higher flag or lower threshold on that kind of flow of information. So so it's a proper case of taking the accurate, reliable, updated information and then utilizing it as an operator in your best commercial model with a platform that can actually make that happen.
Okay, thank you, Eli, Nicholas. That's great. I think there was a very good point made, and when we first started talking about number validation and working with XConnect, and then I was talking to a number of operators, and Andrew and Nicholas were two of the early sort of adopters in terms of the discussions, was much more around informed choices. You can still route that traffic, even if it's unallocated. It's a risk you take. It may be that with the unknown, it may be okay. There's just a consideration, but I think once you've got the information, the decision then is yours and the risk is yours. Some will be very risk averse. Some operators will take a bit more risk and a bit more kind of, we're happy to be a bit more exposed like that. So I think it's about creating the ability. What we hope is that to give you smart information to make smart decisions as a business. We can't make the decisions for you. And Andrew, as you said, around some of the more high revenue destinations, you could do a small amount of traffic and achieve the same amount of revenue as you could with one of the more the bigger destinations, but it's balancing out that risk. It's balancing out that that sort of confidence to say to your team, go and take on these new destinations. We're good with it as long as we can validate it. And what we've done is created the ability to look at a global level, a country level, and a carrier level. So you can, for example, certain destinations, you're more than happy. Just it's good. Certain, maybe as I said, more premium destinations, you may validate every single call from every single carrier, or just a new carrier. So there are plenty of options around giving you that informed choice to move forward. And then taking on from there a step further, what we're kind of seeing, or what I'm hearing from a lot of people, is sort of each country in itself, or each set of operators in the country, are having some sort of initiative, some sort of plan about how they're going to tackle this themselves. And Amit, we were talking briefly about services within India and some of the regulations around there. So in terms of the validation side, I guess ideally for you, being able to validate before the traffic actually hits India is going to be a useful process in terms of managing it more locally. Is that what you think you'll see?
Yeah, absolutely. Because all of these, the all of these frauds and the CLI manipulations and the stuff, all that's happening through the internet side of traffic. Fortunately, in India, it's not an unrestricted internet telephony that's available here. So whatever fraudulent or manipulated traffic that we see is definitely coming in from the international side. I mean, if it definitely makes sense for countries like India to have kind of solutions which ensure that the inbound traffic for us is kind of checked, and that helps for us.
Yeah, we've seen the same thing, Nick, and the voice business is built around swap arrangements between carriers distributing traffic, and it's just a part of life now. And it's unfortunate, but we do get traffic from carriers who are just we do agree deals with carriers that are just trying to generate revenue. So we will send them traffic, and they will send us traffic. And in the past, we've detected traffic that has just been generated based and terminated somewhere else to false number ranges or premium number ranges or something like that. And it's really important to be able to see both sides of the numbering. We're making sure that obviously we're sending valid numbers out, but our partners and ourselves really want to know the numbers inbound are valid as well.
I think Nick, if I can just highlight, so that capability which Andrew was just mentioning about both A number and B number validation, right? In a way, that's kind of the new change. Till now, B number we kind of understand, that's kind of our life and blood. A number, frankly, has been kind of the irrelevant kind of who cares. But I mean, the increasing sensitivity towards the validation of that CLI, and in a way, OBR, origin-based rating, kind of put all of that right at the forefront. And I think given the fact that we're 30 minutes into a session and we haven't yet mentioned OBR, it's shocking. But I'll hand it back to you, Nick.
Well, no, and the
reason still sorting out the. We're still sorting out the OBR issues from the UK's recent change. Thank you very much.
What can I say? We are blessed with a variety of options and a variety of pricing models, and the fact that you have a £2 surcharge per minute is fine. Really, don't panic. Don't panic.
Well, and Elliot, the reason that I haven't brought OBR up until now is not because I don't think it's worth a discussion. I think it's something we're going to live with. It's going to become bigger and bigger. It's going to go wider across the globe in terms of people's the way that they want to deliver the service. But that aside, that's something we're going to have to deal with, and we have the technology, we have the algorithms to manage all the OBR side. I think even with the OBR side, we're still going to see a fair amount of fraud. We're still going to see a fair amount of inappropriate behaviour. With or without the OBR side. So I think operators, and I know Ellie, we discussed this a while back, everyone's got to do it. Everyone knows they have to. Most people don't want to yet, but they're going to have to in time. And then really, I guess that leads us on to kind of the next steps of this validation type service, which is, are we heading for a global kind of stir shaken, but each country controlling its own services in terms of, identifying individuals, identifying numbers, and being stored centrally. Obviously, that's a huge piece of undertaking. But in terms of where you kind of see maybe MMP and then the identity side of it, Ellie, how do you see that evolving over the next kind of year, 18 months? And obviously from Amit, Nicholas, and Andrew, your perspective, do you think that within your national operator kind of regulator network that something around that database side is going to come in the near term or maybe longer term? So, Ellie, I'll open that up to you first.
Okay. So you mentioned two words. You mentioned the word global and stir shaken. That's quite a scary set of words put together. Right?
That's why I gave it to you.
For one industry, right? Let's put it from a purely financial perspective. Yeah, roughly. Having spoken to a number of operators in the USA, my guess is around about $250 million was invested by the industry, vendors, internal costs to implement stir shaken. Roll it out across 220 countries. Someone do the maths. It's a lot of money with a lot of zeros at the end of it. So the decision to go down that kind of methodology definitely needs to be thought through. It's good that we will have an opportunity to see the results of stir shaking in the USA. Has that truly impacted on the robocalling, on the spam calling? I know here in the UK, the industry, both at kind of standards level and at Ofcom level and at kind of industry bottom-up level, is all evaluating the stir shaken. It's interesting to note there are other solutions that are out there that can provide that validation and confidence of the A number. And as I mentioned before, it's all about giving trust and giving validation to that A number, that CLI is actually truly the CLI that's being presented. So stir shaken is a model. It's not the only model, and there can be alternative ideas as well out there that may be applicable for us as an industry. So I do think the macro concept of bringing trust back to caller ID is absolutely essential for the industry. I mean, we had the disaster of a scenario whereby we had a senior person from Ofcom rightly highlighting to the general UK consumer, don't rely upon the caller ID, right? The fact that it might be your Barclays Bank CLI that's coming up, don't rely upon that. Make sure you're having alternative methodologies for validating this call is from your bank, etc. So that's not a comfortable position for us as an industry to be in. And by the way, the same issue goes on the messaging side as well. So we collectively across the industry have to bring back trust to the caller ID. How we do that needs to be thought through quite carefully. I do believe that there will be national, it'll be a nation states that will be kind of working their way through. As I said, UK is, definitely getting close to making some proposals and consultations. But it needs to be carefully thought through because it's not obvious that stir shaken is the default answer for all.
Okay, thanks, Eli. Any comments from any other members of the panel based on your kind of local experience or what you see happening across your regions in this kind of verification identity type element?
So in India, a couple of years back, the regulator came out with a set of regulations, and we've been kind of implementing it in phases. As of now, on the SMS side, it's quite predominantly implemented. It's helps to the operators to validate the originators and also take the fact that if about the consent from the receiver. So it's a fairly elaborate system, and it's completely based on a blockchain-based implementation. Now we are also kind of getting that moved into the voice domain. So those discussions are in progress, and a lot of these checks to control the robocalls and stuff are going to get implemented. So I think that's where we're moving. Not there right now, but yes, we're moving there.
Yeah, we're seeing in our part of the world, we're seeing Australia who have recently implemented scam regulations, and New Zealand's still working through that. But the complexities we're facing in the M&F Group business under the Symbio brand are the fact that one of the driving forces behind our business is the resale of phone numbers. And we're seeing some of these rules coming in that are actually prohibiting offshore companies owning phone numbers because they're unable to deliver local CLI on the international routes. And that's critical to our business. We have a lot of software companies that are offshore. They want to send calls internationally that look local. And they want to be able to do it. And now we're working through another layer of the problem. Just how do we cope with that with some of the regulations that are coming in?
Okay, interesting.
And
Nicholas, from your perspective.
So Eli mentioned, stir and shake, and obviously there are many. I guess there are other solutions that's are there besides the stir and shake in the US. As Amit says in India, and we have DLT blockchain model that works. I look at it as a pretty good example of how successful domestically, at least it works out there. But for international to really work to prevent fraud, I guess it's important that we're looking at the whole ecosystem of the players, in this case, in the wholesale business. be it operators, be it carriers out there, as long as they are, as long as it's a request, it's a demand, it's a supply. Is unless everyone get together and accept the fact that, look, this is going to be zero tolerance. We're not going to accept any fraudulent traffic. We all agree we're going to be part of this, member, so to speak, that we're going to eradicate this fraud traffic. Unless that happens, it's very difficult to completely eradicate and all of this. So at the end of the day, it's back to financial motivation to so many degrees there. The question earlier from Nick is, what do we do around it? Do we route or do we block it? Then again, the question depends on the carrier themselves. You could stop it completely and potentially, lose a big chunk of the revenue, potentially. Or you could say, well, I'll be selective in what would be considered as a bad fraud, a so-called acceptable, this is fine. Who make a judge out of that? I guess it's the industry-wide challenge. It's not really a single operator or single carrier a sort of solution can fix it. So while we agree that as a direction, we certainly should go towards that, that area, that to bring trust back to telephony, bring trust back to the E2P network, allowing people to answer the call without hesitation of, this is the fraud traffic coming in to cheat money of us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valid point, Nicholas, and it comes back to Ellie's comment about trust earlier. And I think there's two elements of trust that we need to restore. There's trust from a consumer perspective, but there's also trust between operators. I think the lockdown, the pandemic, the lack of travel has made the industry a little bit less personal than it possibly was, in terms of you would see each other pretty frequently, and you'd agree to deals. But also, like you say, there's financial pressure, there's targets, there's revenues that you've agreed with your business, and in order to hit that, you will have to make decisions that suit the business. As you say, I think it is a collaborative effort. I think operators need to buy into the idea of, if you block the traffic and they send it to someone else, then they accept it. That doesn't solve the problem. It just moves the point of reference in terms of who's willing to take that traffic. So I think there is a need for this kind of, and I'm not sure there's appetite from every operator. I hope there is, but we've not spoken to everyone. Obviously, we're just speaking to a core group. And the one thing I'm trying to achieve with Odine and working with XConnect is to eventually have this kind of ecosystem of carriers that are using validated services as a standard process. It's not an optional extra. It's a standard process, because if we're validating both ends, the trust is restored. If the trust is restored, the quality is better. The quality is better. The customer is happier. It's all a chain that goes together. So I think what we are seeing is definitely, the word trust has been brought up in a couple of these panels recently, and I think that is very key. And obviously, we have to trust the data. And as Ellie says, it's an art to manage the data. And as you guys start to use the services more, and we start to work with this, I think there's additional value that we will find, both commercially and for your customers from that position. And again, if we can reduce fraud, reduce risk, reduce disputes, all of those things cost you money. Getting paid on time is a big thing when you're working on the basis of kind of volume and those things. So I think that's been a really interesting kind of insight for the session today. And thank you everyone for your time and efforts. It's been great to get some different views on it, in terms of where we think we can take this. And I think, as we said, Ellie and the XConnect team will not stop evolving, because the fraudsters won't, and nor can we as a business. So it's informed decisions, good information, good decisions. So thank you very much for all of your time. And David, thank you for helping us organise. And if anyone wants to learn any more, come and see us at Capacity next week. Shame you guys can't be there, but I'm sure virtually you will be until next year. But London's cold and wet now, so don't worry, it's fine.
Thanks, Nick.
If you want me to do your shopping for you, that's fine. Absolutely, just let me know.
Well, I just want to say thanks so much to Nick, to Amit, to Andrew, Ellie, and to Nicholas there. What a fascinating debate there, and some wonderful demonstrations of collaboration. You can connect with our speakers and representatives from their companies using the SwapCard app. I once again like to thank session sponsor Odine Solutions for their support capacity Europe 2021 and for highlighting this topic in particular. And make sure you check out the agenda to see what's coming up next, either on SwapCard or live in the conference room. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Bye for now.